There's a lot of discussion about spiritual awakening, yet few are truly prepared for what it entails. Awakening means entering a space where your old self no longer functions. It's that point when questions multiply, meaning seems to slip away, and yet something within urges you forward, guided by a strange intuition that there is something more, a realm you've not yet learned to inhabit. Carl Jung described spiritual awakening as a profound psychological process in which the unconscious stops feeling foreign and becomes a map for inner transformation. There is no single path. Everyone experiences this journey differently. Yet, recurring patterns and phases emerge, like notes in the symphony of the soul. Today, we'll explore the 12 stages of spiritual awakening, a guide to help you identify where you are and where you are being called. For the first time, you may be able to name the silent processes occurring within you. Stay with us till the end, because understanding this can transform how you walk this path. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a great time. There's much truth ahead. Albert Camus, in The Myth of Sisyphus, said, "The absurd is born of the confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world." We seek meaning, coherence, and answers, yet the world, indifferent, offers none. This disconnect between inner longing and external silence sparks the awakening crisis. Outwardly, life continues, work, routines, relationships, but inside, something begins to unravel. Meaning slips through the cracks, signaling the first stage of awakening. A profound, soul-level dissatisfaction. She said, an inner calling for what the outside world cannot provide. Jung observed that individuation often begins when false peace collapses. The persona, the social mask we wear, starts to crumble internally. You feel as though you are playing a role, yet no longer part of the story. It's like being trapped in a script whose lines have lost meaning. This fracture between who you have become and who you could be awakens the soul. It's subtle, yet radical. Answers aren't provided. Instead, the foundation of certainty is shaken. Camus suggested that in the face of the absurd, the only choice is to live with clarity, without retreating into illusion. Jung adds that lucidity is the threshold of transformation. Only when the mask begins to crack can truth enter. The soul's call is unmistakable. Ignoring it comes at a cost. Everything false will erode until something authentic emerges. Following dissatisfaction comes the urge to seek answers. You feel compelled to understand what's unfolding inside. This urgency drives exploration. Books, videos, spiritual teachings, philosophies, practices, anything that touches this new territory. Early on, small insights, a line in a book, a meditation, recurring symbols, can unlock parts of yourself. You may feel in harmony with the collective unconscious. Synchronicities appear, and you sense you are not alone. Others have walked this path and left signs. This stage is active and curious. Experimentation is common. Meditation, ayahuasca, Reiki, astrology, archetypes, each offering fragments of what you seek. Yet a major pitfall arises: spiritual overload. The ego, overwhelmed by inner chaos, may turn the search into consumption. The more you absorb, the more the real dive is delayed. The mind becomes saturated with content while the soul and heart remain untouched. The goal here is balance. Discover what resonates, what cultivates presence, and what is mere distraction. Jung saw this as a stage of individuation, confronting multiple valid yet limited systems and discerning what truly matters. From this balance emerges fertile silence. Within it, the first flickers of the self appear. After all the seeking, Something arises unexpectedly, a dream, a shiver, or an uncanny intuition. This marks the third stage, illumination. The self begins to emerge, not as a concept, but as a lived experience. The restless, searching soul begins to speak, recognized not by effort, but by recognition. These signs, symbols, perfectly timed messages, and/or inner silence, carry certainty. They originate not from the ego, but from the organizing center of the psyche, the self, Jung's blueprint of who you are meant to become. The self reveals itself gradually, through dreams, creativity, and choices that later prove correct. Confusion remains, but you are no longer lost in the same way. Something shifts, doubts persist, yet an inner compass begins to form. This stage does not last forever, but its trace remains. You now know there is something within that is real, even if you cannot fully explain it. Next comes resistance, human and inevitable. The ego, rattled by cracks in the persona and flickers of the self, seeks control. You may attempt to return to familiar routines, but they no longer fit. Comfort becomes suffocating, yet fear, habit, or instinct keeps you holding on. And this tension, the unconscious rising while the ego retreats, manifests as doubt and skepticism. Jung explained that resistance protects the psyche. Some parts of us are not ready for the new, while others sense that embracing it means letting go of the old. This inner battle is natural. Signals blur, intuition fades, and the soul whispers while the ego shouts. Exhaustion sets in, a subtle burnout from inhabiting two selves simultaneously. Resistance is normal, retreat is expected. Eventually, resistance becomes more painful than beneficial. Then surrender arises, not as a conscious choice, but as letting go. The ego softens, realizing control is impossible. This is not defeat. It is the beginning of surrender. It's important to understand, resistance is part of awakening, not failure. The old self resists because it knows it is being left behind. Even when this feels like freedom, it is still painful, confusing, and draining. This phase requires patience. Rushing or self-punishment serves nothing. What helps is honesty, acknowledging fear, recognizing the mind's protective instinct, and accepting that letting go hurts. Spiritual awakening is not linear. It flows organically, advancing and retreating, unraveling. During this stage, the ego continues attempting to control the process. Simply noticing the attempt to resist is already part of awakening. When you recognize that resistance doesn't need to be defeated, only understood, it begins to dissolve. What it fears most, being seen, is precisely what must occur. The fifth stage of spiritual awakening is the abyss, a confrontation with the shadow. It arrives without warning. After the ego loosens its grip, the unconscious rises, but it doesn't bring light. It brings everything you've buried, anger you couldn't process, fears you rationalized, shame you masked, and guilt you tried to erase with good behavior. All of it demands presence. This isn't punishment. It's integration. Jung described the shadow as all that the ego refuses to recognize within itself. It doesn't vanish. It hides. Awakening forces it to surface. Spiritual growth isn't only about approaching the light. It requires walking through the darkness. Patterns you never notice now feel sharper. You act in ways you don't understand. You say and do things that contradict the self you've built. This isn't madness, it's revelation. The unconscious presents truth. The descent can be harsh, painful, and without guidance, raw truth demanding courage. The old self resists, but the soul urges full self-recognition. Jung once said, "The shadow is 90% gold. Encountering it may be uncomfortable, yet it contains strength, creativity, authenticity, and wholeness, the aspects of yourself you once denied, but which still exist within." The shadow is not an enemy. True awakening must pass through this abyss, because integration is impossible without confronting what has been rejected. Facing the shadow, neither to defeat nor flee, initiates a subtle yet solid transformation. Pain is present, but so is a sense of grounding. The sixth stage is saying goodbye to your former self. No one emerges unchanged. This isn't merely a phase ending, it's the collapse of an entire identity. Your roles, inherited beliefs, and old certainties unravel, first slowly, then suddenly. Even if you longed for change, losing yourself feels profound. The external world remains the same, but internally everything falls silent. Motivation fades, desires lose color, words fail to describe you. The old center is gone, leaving only silence. Many mistake this void for failure, depression, or error. But Jung recognized this dark interior as essential. Individuation requires the death of ego dominance, so the self can emerge as the true center. Personality is not erased, its dictatorship ends, making space for depth to surface. Isolation is inevitable. No one can walk this stage for you. No pre-written advice suffices. It's a sacred, solitary ritual. Old desires lose power, others' opinions fade, and the soul reorganizes in silence. Even in apparent stillness, something essential is forming. Like a seed decomposing before sprouting, the rebirth begins quietly, without visions or drama. At first, subtle changes appear. Truer choices, more honest responses. The internal atmosphere shifts. You no longer betray yourself easily. The seventh stage is the emergence of authentic individuality. This is neither the old self returning nor a new persona. It is raw, clear, and fully alive. You stop trying to fit in and start striving for wholeness. Your identity's center shifts from approval, status, or inherited duties to a firm, quiet axis. Something within whispers, "This is me," even if words are absent. The ego remains but serves rather than leads. Intuition guides more, reactions diminish, and actions come from alignment, not impulse. Self-judgment softens, comparison loses power, and peace arises from living authentically. Emotional autonomy takes root, not isolation, but grounding. External validation is no longer required. You exist in coherence with what is alive within. The eighth stage is frequent synchronicity. Jung defined synchronicity as meaningful connections between seemingly unrelated events. Signs occur naturally, without effort, revealing a private language understood only when you are present. They don't guarantee outcomes or solve problems, but confirm alignment between inner and outer life. Your perception expands. Reality feels like music, with harmony, dissonance, and patterns. These experiences are resonance, not magic. Your awakened state naturally attracts aligned circumstances. Attempting to force these moments makes them vanish. They are reminders, not performances, signaling that you are on track. Jung taught that the outer world reflects the psyche. Synchronicity is the soul breathing through reality, a living symbol of connection between the visible and invisible. Trusting these signs brings relaxation, not from comprehension, but from sensing the guiding thread. The ninth stage is authentic expression. After confronting the shadow, symbolically dying, rebuilding the center, and witnessing synchronicity, you begin acting from truth. Speech changes, presence shifts. Honesty and alignment replace force or impulse. You express what you truly think, choose what you truly feel, even if it upsets or frightens others. Some connections fade, some relationships no longer fit. Misalignment becomes healing. The social mask dissolves slowly, in daily gestures, in refusing to please, in silent moments, in spontaneous laughter no longer performed. Perfection isn't required. Slips happen, but the soul now insists on coherence. Life rearranges around this alignment. Truer relationships emerge. Your work takes on new meaning. Decisions feel lighter because they're based on who you truly are, not who you've learned to appear to be. Authentic expression isn't about speaking constantly. It's about being at peace with yourself, even in silence. Truth doesn't need to shout. It simply exists. The 10th stage of spiritual awakening is direct contact with the self, not as a theory, but as a felt presence. The self, Jung's deep psychic center representing potential wholeness, stops being merely a guiding force and becomes your reference point. It's not constant, but when it appears, it transforms everything. There's a quiet that doesn't depend on circumstances, clarity that needs no explanation, a sense of being fully in yourself, not as an idea, but as lived experience. Choices become clearer because they emerge from a stable place. The self doesn't demand. It guides with calm certainty, like a silent compass pointing north even as the world shifts. In this state, the outer world may still be chaotic, but inside something has settled. Judgment fades, comparison disappears, the urge to control dissolves. There is no inner war, only listening and trust. Jung viewed meeting the self as the heart of individuation, a profound reordering of the psyche. Suffering doesn't vanish, but it no longer rules you. You live with lightness, not because life is easier, but because you no longer identify with roles and instead root yourself in being. Fear, doubt, and pain remain, but now there's space for them. The self doesn't make you better, it makes you whole. The next stage is realizing that your inner state co-creates reality. Life begins to mirror who you are. What once seemed random now shows coherence, not according to desire, but according to being. Jung said, "The external world is in large part a projection of the inner one. You aren't inventing reality, but your perception and interpretation shape your experience. Loss can be ending or opportunity, crisis or liberation. Perspective changes everything. You stop blaming the world and start seeing your role in what unfolds. This is not guilt, it's empowerment. Consciousness carries direction, weight, and creative force. Intention becomes a tool. You act with clarity, no longer react from fear. Gradually, the outer world aligns. Relationships shift, opportunities appear, and old cycles break because you've stepped out of the internal loop sustaining them. Co-creation isn't manipulation. It's living with presence so the world responds naturally. Every step sends ripples through reality. Awakening turns into action. The search ends, not because all questions are answered, but because the questions themselves change. The perceived division between light and shadow, ego and soul, begins to dissolve. There is no more war, only unity. Presence replaces urgency. The final stage is the emergence of unconditional love and total integration. Not romantic love, not transactional love, but love as a living state of being. You face yourself with no internal enemy. Shame is embraced. Shadow and ego find their place. Acceptance extends to others. People are not projects. but simply who they are. Judgment falls away. Forgiveness becomes natural, arising from deep understanding. You stop striving to be special. Instead, you aim for wholeness. In this wholeness, freedom appears, not by separating from life, but by integrating without losing yourself. Inner and outer boundaries blur, life flows through you, and you move with it. There's no need to prove, resist, or rush, only to live openly. This love isn't an emotion. It's the quietest strength, born from a long journey through emptiness, surrender, shadow, and rebirth. Integration doesn't erase duality, it includes it. Light and shadow coexist without conflict. When this happens, you become whole. Awakening becomes a continuous way of living, not an exception. Now, it's not about reaching a higher state or escaping pain. It's about returning, grounding, embodying, and recognizing what was always within. Individuation, as Jung described, is not perfection. It's the movement of becoming fully yourself, with contradictions and fragments united into something real, human, and complete. Looking back, spiritual awakening isn't a single moment. It's a process, the unraveling of survival illusions and the patient rebuilding of your essential truth. Every stage brought pain, beauty, and purpose. The call was subtle, the crisis unavoidable, the shadow fierce, the rebirth quiet, authenticity freeing, and love emerged not as a prize, but as a consequence of walking through it all. Awakening isn't flipping a switch. It's learning to walk in the dark with confidence. It's no longer fleeing yourself, but choosing wholeness over perfection. It's living in peace with complexity, listening to the soul, which doesn't seek glory but truth. As Jung said, the soul doesn't want to be healed, it wants to be heard. Listening changes everything, not outside but within. You stop building yourself for others and start existing fully. This is where freedom begins, and with freedom comes responsibility. To live coherently, to maintain inner awareness, to keep listening. Awakening continues in spirals, cycles, and layers, revealing themselves as you walk. You are no longer who you were at the journey's start, but you've always been you. What fell away wasn't you. It was who you thought you had to be. What was born is more real, grounded, present. Happiness may come, but as a byproduct of integration, not a goal. The soul doesn't want promises. It wants presence. It always whispers the way home. You've journeyed not to become someone better, but to become whole. And being whole, that is awakening. Now, which stage resonates with you today? Share in the comments with the phrase, "I am awakening," so I know you stayed until the end, and that this journey stirred something within you. If this video helped you, consider clicking the super thanks button below. Your support not only expresses gratitude, but also allows this channel to reach more people awakening, often in silence. Thank you for being here. See you in the next video.